Hi, everyone. My name is Brooklynn Watkins, and I would like to thank you all for joining me for my thesis presentation. Today, I will be speaking on my project titled Katniss Everdeen, Feminist Icon in the Hunger Games or Upholder of Traditional Gender Norms. During this presentation, I will first provide a brief summary and characters list. Then I will state my thesis for my project, and then I will give some definitions of young adult literature, dystopian literature, and feminist theory and criticism. After that, I will start looking at the arguments that support Katniss is not an ideal heroine and adheres to gender norms, and then arguments that Katniss breaks gender norms and is an ideal heroine. I will then give my own conclusion based on my research. And lastly, I will give my acknowledgements and contact information. Here's a brief summary. The Hunger Games follows the heroine Katniss Everdeen. In Katniss's oppressive society of Panem, the rich live in the capital where they live very materialistic lives, whereas the 12 districts beyond the capital are forced to work and provide resources for the capital. The government controls all the food, so many people in the district starve for most of their lives. Each year, there is the Hunger Games, where 2 tributes from each district are chosen at random to fight in the Hunger Games. The 24 tributes must fight to the death until there is only one left standing, and the winner gets more food for their district. When Katniss Everdeen's little sister Prim is chosen, Katniss volunteers to take her place as tribute, alongside the male tribute, Peeta Mellark. Her strong personality and skills make her loved by the people of the capital. The capital also favors Katniss because of Peeta's declaration of love for Katniss and the star-crossed lovers trope. Once Katniss is in the games, she proves to be a very strategic and strong tribute. She outwits and outfights the other tributes, and when it comes down to just her and Peeta as the final two, Katniss forms a plan to outsmart the oppressive power structure. Her plan allows her and Peeta to both live. This one act of defiance towards the capital extremely escalates. The following 2 books of the trilogy follow Katniss as she becomes the face of the movement to overthrow the entire power structure. It's important to note here that I'm just analyzing Katniss in the first book, not the entire trilogy. Here's a quick characters list. We have Katniss, who is the main heroine and female tribute for District 12. Peeta is the male tribute for District 12. Prim is Katniss's little sister. Rue is the tribute that is Katniss's ally, and Rue also reminds Katniss a lot of Prim. Gale is Katniss's best friend and hunting partner back home. And lastly, Cinna is Katniss's stylist and friend while in the capital. Before I go any further, I want to state my thesis, which is, although Katniss does ultimately fall short of breaking gender norms because of her objectification and because she adheres to some gender roles, I still believe she is a strong female heroine and provides a good role model for young readers through her bravery and unique identity as a female character. All right, getting into some quick definitions. Young adult literature is a genre that is targeted at readers between the ages of 10 to 25. Young adult literature can help young readers explore their identity and their values. It also usually deals with a coming-of-age story for the main character, who is also within the age range of 10 to 25, so readers can relate to the character. Dystopian literature usually follows global concerns that deal with social and political structures. Dystopian literature also explores personal identity concerns. Some examples of common tropes in dystopian literature include liberty from oppression, environmental destruction, and looming catastrophe, as well as questions of identity. Although the genre of dystopian literature is considered adult level, there are young adult books that display dystopian characteristics. Young adult dystopian literature allows students to contemplate social and political topics while exploring their own identity and place in society. Some examples of young adult dystopian literature include The Giver and Divergent. The Hunger Games falls along young adult dystopian because it follows a cruel power structure where citizens are starved, and we see Katniss exploring both her own identity as well as her place in the oppressive society. And so we can critically look at the faults of her society as well as our own. Feminist theory analyzes how literature and other forms of media like movies and TV shows reinforce or oppose the oppression of the female gender. Analyzing literature with a feminist lens can help us better understand literature and context. Many critics use a feminist lens to analyze literature, and it is also the lens I use for my research. Now I will be moving into the arguments and analysis section of my project. I will begin with critics that argue Katniss is not the ideal heroine and adheres to gender norms. Critic Allison Bewley, in her article titled Literary Traditions on Fire, Mimetic Desire, and the Role of the Orphaned Heroine in Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games trilogy, analyzes how Katniss is objectified. She identifies 2 ways she is objectified. The first by Peeta when he declares his love for Katniss. Bewley explains that this is the exact moment when she becomes an object of love. And in the book, Katniss accuses Peeta by saying, "He made me look weak." So we see how Katniss does not like that Peeta has placed the trope of star-crossed lovers on her. Bewley's second major point as to how Katniss is objectified looks at how Katniss doesn't perform actions on her own terms while in the games, but rather she always reacts to others. So Katniss tries to not engage with violence unless she absolutely has to. Some readers may read this as Katniss standing against violence and protest, but Bewley states that this defines her as an object. One of Bewley's main points is about Katniss being objectified by the male character Peeta. Another important character to bring into the discussion while looking at male influence over Katniss is Cinna. Now, I know most readers of the Hunger Games love Cinna, but in Stephanie Vega's article titled Havoc-Making Heroines in Young Adult Dystopian Literature, she analyzes Cinna and his authority and manipulation over Katniss's appearance while in the Capitol. Vega argues that Cinna manipulates her appearance in a very meticulous and strategic way. He's essentially starting the process of making her the Mockingjay symbol without her consent or knowledge. We also see how Cinna always makes Katniss have a softness and fierceness in her appearance. This is very intentional on Cinna's part. In the picture on the screen, we see Katniss during her interview. Her dress before she twirls is very beautiful. It fits her very nicely and complements her female body. But when she twirls, we see the flames engulfing around her, which brings a very intense amount of fierceness to Katniss. Readers know that Katniss is more of the fierce and strong type of female character. So why does Cinna not just focus on fierceness? Why does he always have to include a softness? Vega explains that by visually displaying the physical qualities of female sensibility, Cinna presents Katniss as a pure, innocent young girl whose seemingly defiant actions towards the Capitol come from overwhelming love for Peeta. Her costume distinguishes her as a frivolous, love-struck female instead of a dangerous rebel. This shows us how Cinna has manipulated Katniss and Katniss's image from the very beginning for purposes much larger than just his care for Katniss, but rather for the future of the rebellion. Vega points out Cinna's manipulation of Katniss's appearance. Similar to Vega's argument, critics Vera Woloshin, Nancy Tabor, and Laura Lane, in their article titled Discourses of Masculinity and Femininity in the Hunger Games, Scared, Bloody, and Stunning, look at how Katniss adheres to gender norms surrounding female beauty that are pushed onto her by Cinna. Katniss, at the beginning of the book in District 12, resists a focus of her appearance, but eventually Katniss accepts the notion that in order to gain support from sponsors, she will have to look beautiful and feminine. So we see Katniss let go of this defining characteristic of herself in order to get support. Now are we transitioning to critics that argue Katniss is an ideal heroine. Critic Gwendolyn Dulski, in her article titled Wollstonecraft's Vision of Virtue Realized and Averted, analyzing popular female protagonists in young adult fiction, analyzes how Katniss's choice to volunteer for Prim shows true bravery and courage. Katniss explains that District 12 hasn't seen a volunteer in decades. Dulski says that this shows truly how brave Katniss is, since she is the first volunteer in so long. Dulski also points out that Katniss is trying to resist the Capitol's pressure to kill to win at the end of the story. When her and Peeta are the last two standing, she refuses to kill Peeta and wants to stick with her virtues and challenge the oppressive power structure. While Dulski analyzes how Katniss's character makes her an ideal heroine, now we'll look at how Katniss breaks gender and social roles through critic Catherine Strong Hansen's article, Metamorphosis of Katniss Everdeen, The Hunger Games, Myth, and Femininity. Hansen analyzes Katniss as an ideal heroine through her breaking of social norms by expressing alternate paths of identity for females. Hansen analyzes and compares Katniss to two Greek mythological figures, Artemis and Philomela. Hansen finds that Katniss doesn't align with either of these two female mythic figures, which she interprets as rejecting those roles and creating her own unique identity. A quote from Hansen's analysis that is my favorite is, Collins' trilogy indicates the importance of young women breaking with history to make their own personae, demonstrating that femininity need not to simply replicate the forms that have previously existed. Similar to Hansen, Lisa Manor and Lauren Francis, in their article titled Katniss's Oppositional Romance, Survival, Queer, and Sorrow Desire in Suzanne Collins' The Hunger Games trilogy, look at how Katniss breaks typical gender roles surrounding love. Mancher and Francis argued that Katniss expresses more love towards Prim and Rue as a sister and protector, rather than expressing romantic love towards Peeta and Gale. Mancher and Francis interpret this as Katniss expressing oppositional paths of desire, even from the position of disempowerment. This argument provides a perspective on how Katniss defies the gender role as the stereotypical love interest because she shows more love towards Rue and Prim. After analyzing both sides of this argument, I have came to my own conclusion that Katniss does fall short of breaking gender norms, but I still believe that Katniss is a good female heroine for young readers. I think Katniss does break some surface level stereotypes and has many strong characteristics that are admirable for young readers. Here's my works cited page with all the articles I talked about. And to finish up, I want to thank my thesis advisor, Dr. Burgess, for all her help through the whole research process. Here's my contact information in case anyone wants to reach out to me with questions or wants to do further discussion. Thank you all for being here and listening to my presentation. And now we'll do live questions.